Thanks for joining us for That Larimer County Show. My name is Denny LaRue, Larimer County Community Information Manager, and my co-host is Neil Gluckman.
Hi, Denny.
Larimer County Assistant County Manager. Hi, Neil. Our guest today is Dr. Jill Mosteller, and Jill is with Colorado State University's Marketing Department in the College of Business. Larimer County just wrapped up our citizen survey. We do this every 2 years, and we worked with Jill Mosteller on this survey. It's the 6th survey we've done with Colorado State University, and the first one was in 2002. This gives us some really good trending over time, so we can look at how things change over time, so with this consistent data. So let's just jump into the survey results and see where we're at. Let's start with that stability over time, Jill.
Okay. Well, Denny, what the data suggests is that the sentiments of citizens concerning Larimer County remain positive and remain stable. So over time, in terms of the 35 services that were surveyed, 86% of all respondents overall responded and said they're important services. And in terms of performance, they also evaluated them as being adequately or more than adequately or better than adequately performed.
And part of that, interesting part of that performance, I think, is the don't knows. When citizens rate importance, they know how they feel about something, if it's important or not. But when they get to the performance data, we see a lot of don't knows, especially for kind of what we might call niche services. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, so one of the trends, the citizens were asked to respond on a 3-point scale in terms of, was it less than adequately performed, better than performed, or I don't know.
So I want to just back up just a second. So,
okay.
Because why don't we talk about what services we're talking about? We're talking about government services in Larimer County,
yes,
which are public type services such as workforce, health services, human services, road and bridge. So we're talking about typical government services.
And specialized government services too, like child support or mental health services or things that maybe aren't used every day by everybody.
Okay, so I just want to set some
context.
Thank
you.
Yes.
Okay.
Great point. So what we found was that for some of these more niche services, for example, for military veterans, for perhaps some mental and health or substance abuse or child related services, is that up to 37% or even more of citizens said, I don't know how to evaluate these particular performances, which in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing.
No, because not everybody thinks that they need government services.
Correct. So what it basically suggests, or what kind of came out of the study, was that in the process of taking the survey, the sentiment was for some that, oh my gosh, I had no idea Larimer County offered all of these services. And some of these I don't know about, so I'm going to check that particular box.
Denny and I do this thing where we ask people that are in attendance at a meeting, how many of you use Larimer County services? And usually the majority think that they don't use any county service during a day or during a week or whatever, and yet...
And then we start saying, do you vote? Do you drive on county roads? Do you register your vehicle? Do you, have recycling that goes to the landfill? And we just start listing off, and all of a sudden it's
the light bulbs go off.
Yeah,
exactly. So it's invisible to them.
And we're working on that, with our community report, trying to get that information.
But your report reflects that. The survey kind of reflects a lot of that. I assume that we just don't know.
But also, what it comes down to, you've said this before, is that the core services are the ones that impact the most people.
Yes. So in the survey results, those services that were ranked or rated important, as well as evaluated as being performed well or adequately or better than required, were the landfill, the recycling services, in terms of registering voters, in terms of prosecuting criminal cases. Wildfire protection and rescue was high on that list. So the basic fundamental services that people realize, oh yes, I have to register my car, and that takes place through Larimer County, to say, yes, this is important, and yes, the performance is being performed adequately or better than adequately. So I think for those core services, that resonates with everybody. And for the most part, everybody is pleased with those particular services. When we start getting down into the niche services, military veterans, child support, things along that line, then that's where potentially if people say, well, I don't really utilize those particular services, I don't really have an opinion. But at the same time, I also think that they're important.
Right. So we asked you to do a survey on our services, whether it's important, whether people value it,
How it's performed.
how it's performed. Is this survey valid? I mean, is this something that, is it reliable, valid? Is this something that we can
So
use?
one of the things that we do in distributing this particular survey is we're very deliberate and specific. And so we employ a randomization technique, and the purpose of we find a large sample, and the sample of Larimer County citizens was comprised of those who had landline and or cell phone telephone numbers. And from that, we randomly selected people to participate. And this randomization allows inference. So then in addition to that, we were also engaging a quota sampling process to say, okay, we know that in Larimer County, 50% of the residents are male and 50% are female, and that, you know, a significant percentage live in incorporated Larimer County, but a significant 21%, 22% live,
25-ish, yeah,
25%
right in there.
live in unincorporated.
Outside of city limits.
So
Yeah.
as people were recruited to participate in this randomized process, we were also keeping it representative of the people who comprise the county. And what that allows us to do, Neil, is it allows us to infer. So if we have a representative sample and the process in which they were invited to participate is randomized, then that allows us to create inferences. So we can take a relatively small sample of participants and be able to make inferences about the larger population.
I think the reliability on this was like 2.7%.
Right, the confidence or the margin of error was
Yeah.
like 2.7%. So
That's
that
very
means
good.
that with a 95% confidence interval, which just simply means that, you know, we're 95% confident that the results within plus or minus 2.7% would be representative of what if we were to actually, you know,
Very accurate.
yes, encourage everybody to participate.
And the other part of that is we asked Jill, when I worked with her, to make sure to balance it geographically throughout the county so that, you know, we have a really diverse population.
North to north to south, North
Yeah.
County to South.
Right. So in addition to the outbound calling efforts, what we also did is we provided a list of zip codes. And ideally, we wanted to make sure, and we would ask that in terms of the outbound calling effort to say, please confirm this is the zip code that you live in, and we would continually focus and target in those particular areas that potentially were less representative as we went through that particular process.
Okay, so now that we know that you're not
It's
a fake,
credible.
that this is credible, we could probably talk now about
I'm real.
results.
I'm here.
Okay.
And the response rate was 67%, which is very good.
Right. So what that means is that the people who we contacted and they said, yes, I will participate, when we actually sent them the survey link, they actually went through and followed through and said,
And took the survey.
and took the survey.
I think we talked about this a little bit. We probably in the future will need to look at how to make sure that survey is available to people who are chosen at random but might not have a computer,
Right.
you know, to do the survey. I mean, it's a different
It's hard to
piece of it.
imagine people without a computer, but I guess that's
Yeah,
possible.
because you're asked to take it, you agree, and then you take it online. So there's some things, and we also upped our amount of cell phone numbers
Yes,
this year.
we did. So we continue and evolve in this process, we also have to look at the evolution of how people communicate and what kind of communication technologies that they use. So in this particular sample, compared to 2 years ago, we changed the mix from 50% landline, 50% mobile. And one of the reasons it's driving that is that there is a decline in landline use. I mean, landline telephone as a means of communication is actually, I don't want to say it's becoming obsolete, but current stats indicate that probably 50% of all U.S. landline or homes have a landline.
So generally speaking, how is Larimer County doing?
Well,
Yeah.
doing solid, positive reports, solidly well, stable, consistent with past reports.
Top services. I mean, things that are just so important to people that they just rise to the top.
Landfill, recycling, hazardous
Every year.
waste,
Yeah.
Wildfire protection and rescue, emergency management services, restaurant inspections.
Doing well.
Important, and being performed well. And what's kind of interesting related to that is another related stat where Larimer County is concerned is we have lots of restaurants here.
Right.
And on a per capita basis. So it kind of makes sense because if people like to eat out a lot, then they obviously want to be concerned or be assured that the quality of the food is safe.
Yeah, and I know that we do a very good job with that, and we're very customer service driven, even among our quote regulators who are really act as consultants when they go out and do their restaurant inspections.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother topic.
It is.
So that sounds good. What about, is my name on there? And does it say?
They said that you did a fabulous job. No, your name wasn't on there.
We didn't have
correct that.
So when we look at, we talk about the importance and the performance, what kinds of services do citizens feel need improvement?
Actually, communication about the services that are provided in Larimer County. And I don't know if this is in part a function of those who are taking the survey and saying, wow, I didn't know they did all of this, to say, wow, if I had known about this, I would have known how to answer these particular questions. But that was that. But I think in terms of creating awareness, or what is an effective means of saying, hey, here are all the things that we do, and here's how to access them.
And we're looking at, we kind of beefed up the whole communications part of the survey this year to get a lot more data on, we asked citizens, how can we best communicate with you? And we got some really good data there, so we'll be looking at doing some new things. Our community report, for example, one of the things we try to hit home with is 99% of what we do is for everybody in the county, whether you live inside or outside of city limits. So we're looking at a number of new communication technologies to communicate with people.
Well, and as I think about it, it's probably one of the toughest things to do, because we have asked before, we try to cover every piece of media, whether it's, internet,
every tool in the toolbox.
Paper, yeah, I mean, from the antique to the modern. You're in marketing, correct? I mean,
that's correct. It's
as
challenging.
As the results, what would you do if you were Larimer County?
The first thing I would focus on is really making sure that the website, the usability of the website, meets people's expectations. And that's a challenge in industry, period, as far as how useful is your website.
Because that is the most important way to get it.
It is, and that was across all different age groups, gender, all the different demographic data. Was the website was the most used, and also considered the most useful, but there are always areas for improvement. So. In fact, one of the citizens wrote in a comment and acknowledged that it was challenging, yet also, like, how do you navigate? If I'm going in there for, let's say, child protection services, and I land on the web page, I know larimer.gov, and I land there, how do I, or .org, how do I find that in the maze of all the different services, all the different departments? So, and that's a challenge, and and to think from the citizen's perspective versus perhaps not the organization's perspective.
Right.
How you see yourself versus how people are thinking about
And the timing is really good on that. We have a fairly new webmaster who, with his team right now, is working on that, a redesign, and I think everybody agrees that's the thrust, is getting it more usable, more friendly, easier.
It is hard.
Yeah.
Because while one person's looking at child protection, someone else is looking at how to register their vehicle.
Right.
I mean, so
make sure they're
when you
registered to
look at all
vote.
the services that Larimer County provides.
It's huge.
We're talking to literally hundreds, and it's hard. I mean, it's difficult.
So in terms of the webmaster, what is another common trend is looking at the clickstream data,
Right.
and actually saying, okay, where are people going?
Right.
Yeah.
And
do that,
or to say, okay, you're landing on the page, don't even try to navigate it. Give me
Tell me what you're looking for.
Tell me what you're looking
Yeah.
for, and then allow my internal search engine, to be smart enough to know whatever words you use, I know that that's going to encompass this particular area so I can send you kind of almost like an internal mini Google search
right.
within your site so that they can find the appropriate landing
Or you have those
page.
little sections that I've seen with the highest used tags.
Yeah, we do some
Yep.
You know,
data analysis on that. The second one was very interesting to me too. The second most used way to get information about Larimer County was friends, neighbors, and coworkers.
well, it wouldn't be mine, but
Word of mouth. Well, you work for Larimer County. But you know, that happens all the time, whether you work for a company or government or CSU, it doesn't matter. People will say, oh, you work for CSU, what about such and such?
You know somebody,
Right.
you know, out
Or
of
what-
thousands of people here,
Yeah.
there, and you know.
And so I think, we've been trying for the last year or so to come up with a good way to we do a Larimer County 101 for citizens right now, but we're looking at doing that more internally too, so that our employees are more versed.
So they can be ambassadors for good information.
Good
Exactly.
information, yeah. So that was interesting. I hadn't ever seen that rise to the top before. Friends, neighbors, and coworkers.
So I think it certainly speaks to hopefully the people that they're asking
Yeah,
know. And I think
exactly.
I think that also potentially may relate to Larimer County's experiencing a lot of growth.
Yes.
So we have a lot of new people coming in, and so they're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to go to a website, I'm going to do a search. Number one reason why people go to the internet is to search for information. And by the way, I'm going to ask my neighbor, hey, I need to go register my car. Do I do emissions testing or something along that? Where is it? And asking people for that type of information. So
Something else you said with new residents, and you're talking about that, is you said a lot of times when people move to a new area, even if they don't fit that general demographic, they will not get a landline because they've made this big move. And it's the opportune time to just say, okay, now I'm cell phone.
and that was one of the reasons, and I think probably going forward, that mix of mobile probably needs to
Would be
continue
greater.
to increase, because yes, a lot of people now that long distance is free, on many mobile providers, they're thinking, why do I need to change my telephone number? Because it's embedded in all my friends and family and colleagues that I've known have that telephone number, so they don't want to change their number. And it may be a number from out of state, but yet they still reside in Larimer County.
trust level.
Yeah.
Do people trust Larimer County government?
I think more so than marketing companies per se. I think trust is actually one of the most studied concepts in marketing, because it is so absolutely critical for, if you're going to convey information, that people are willing to take it in and take it into consideration in their decision making. So in terms of if people sense that it's authentic, that the information that you're going to solicit is going to be used. So if I'm going to, as a citizen, if I'm going to take the time and share my time and give you feedback, are you actually going to use it? And inform your decision making going forward. I think that's really crucial. And I think the other part also in the communication out was that perhaps coming from an academic versus a marketing research firm, that information that they're providing, because they had to disclose an email address, is that it was not going to be used for any other marketing purposes. Once it's done, then it's dissipated or eliminated. That also helps, because people are concerned that their information could be used for other unintended purposes, and that erodes the relationship.
So when you get to those questions, we have a small section about quality of life. How is it to work in Larimer County, confidence level, as you're getting at. Those are on a 3-point scale, and a 5-point scale,
It was a 5-point scale, yeah.
And they're staying pretty stable. They're above the middle. How does that look?
That's been relatively stable over time as well, and I think those questions have been implemented over the past 2 or 3 surveys, I think. Generally speaking, people agree that the quality of life in Larimer County is good, and in confidence in terms of the government and doing its job, it's moderate to neutral to I agree with those particular statements. So I think I think it's a positive message that they're sending back, and yet there's still room for improvement or
Always.
areas of concern.
Transparency. How did we do with that? I mean, I know that's very important for government, especially Larimer County. We want to have that image of not only the image, being real. We want to be transparent. We want people to know what's going on in Larimer County.
Well, I think one of the great things that you guys do is, like, as soon as this survey came out, the results of this report, they're posted online.
All of them are on.
So if somebody who's watching here today took the survey, you can actually see the results. And all the questions are there, the survey's up there.
Obviously,
All the data.
unedited, nothing was changed. The numbers are real. They are what they are. I mean, that's true. We do not, if the stuff that's bad or doesn't look as good as it should, it's there.
It is.
You know, and I think because we look at this as an opportunity for improvement. If something needs improvement, well, it's good to know that, because then we
Exactly.
can focus on it.
Exactly.
I mean, it would be easy to get defensive and say, no, we do it great.
No, and
but
I think
it's
that's
good.
And I think it's very important. One of the kind of on a related industry trend in terms of firms who are very successful, and I'm going outside of the government realm, but I think that there are some parallels here, is that co-creation is a huge term that's being used in industry and particularly in marketing, and that is firms and organizations that embrace the people that they serve to say, hey, I want your feedback, help me to solve the problems, or give me ideas, or tell me where I should be pointing my efforts or energies. That creates participation and engagement with the constituents or the citizens, and that creates a relationship.
Co-creation?
Co-creation.
Clean word, right?
Co-creation.
Okay.
Well, and that's a great segue, because when you talk about deliberation with the citizens, the commissioners take the data and they use it. They help it helps them to make budget decisions. And the budget process is just beginning. So it's a good time for them to get this information so they can wrap that into their thinking when they put
exactly.
together the
And
budget.
those that say we need room for improvement, rather than saying, hit the road, what we say is improve it. What do we need to improve? If we need to put resources in there.
Especially if it's important to citizens and it needs to be done better.
Exactly.
Well,
then that's
good
what
to
it's all
know.
about, right?
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, I think the survey is a great tool in terms of sharing what's important and what's on the mind of citizens, and what they're thinking about and where their areas of concerns are.
Exactly. And as
going
Denny
forward.
indicated, to use the tool.
Yeah.
Not just have the tool,
Right.
but to actually to use the tool within our organization.
Yeah.
And when citizens sense that that's actually being used and that information is instrumental in decision making, then that encourages continued participation, because they're saying, okay, we're part of a conversation.
Right. And trust.
Yeah. Well, we say
And it builds trust.
we have an e-newsletter now. We heard you.
Right.
And we're
And
gonna
that was
do
one of the things that came
Right.
forward in the communication,
Yeah.
which I think is an interesting way in terms of how do you communicate effectively, if that's one of the areas, to say, okay, well, let me go in and subscribe to services that are important to me, or keep updated on things that are important to me, and then you can push that information out to me, and then allow me to manage that.
That pull instead of, yeah. So as you mentioned, what's important to our citizens, I think a great place to focus right now is the future. Where are we going? What do citizens think we should be headed toward?
Well, one of the things that definitely came forward, so towards the end of the survey, the question was, what are the top 3 to 5 things that you believe Larimer County should focus on? And looking at those particular comments, and based upon the frequency of those comments, the overall themes were that, number one, they acknowledge that the county is growing. They see the growth, so that there's concern around transportation and infrastructure, knowing that as the population grows, things are going to be potentially strained. So how are we planning to manage that growth process? Jobs. Economic development in Larimer County was also important, and they're all kind of related, the infrastructure and the growth. So if the roads need to be well maintained so that I can get to and from work, as well as with this growth, what potential new opportunities can we create for me, the citizen, from that, but also being mindful and managing that growth in a mindful way. So the parks and open spaces, that was another really important area that people really value here. So they value that quality of life, having the natural spaces combined with the good quality of life, but also having economic vitality. So how do we manage growth in a mindful and a sustainable way with minimizing the environmental impact?
And maintaining the great quality of
Yes.
life that
Yeah.
we have.
I think we live in a great place. What
I
do you
do
think?
too.
And we're
Oh,
governed very well,
absolutely. Yeah.
at least at the county level.
Of course, he would say that. Jill, we want to thank you today
Thank
for
you for
being
having
here.
me.
It was very interesting, and it was great working with you on this.
Me too. I agree. I enjoyed it.
And we will continue to, let people know what we're improving and working on. And as Jill mentioned, all of this data is online at larimer.org, and we've put it on the commissioner's page, which is hopefully easy to find.
If not, it'll be easier as time moves
we'll
on.
make it easier. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
Yeah, for That Larimer County Show.